Welcome to the Fantasy Burn. And welcome into the Fantasy Burn, everybody. I'm super excited right now. I'm watching Monday Night Football, and even though Stephon Diggs just put a dagger in my heart with his touchdown, I didn't need that. I am here with an actual celebrity. This guy is a metaphysical celebrity. He actually talks to the great beyond, and the great beyond tells him what is happening in the NFL. His name is Tyler Smith. We came across each other quite a while ago on Silver and Black Pride when it was part of SB Nation. It's a Raiders fan blog, and both of us were in the comments section. Tyler had his own little article where on Fridays he would come in and give predictions of the Raiders game and stuff. And I eventually started another blog for an upstart blog company, and I was the Raiders writer. And so I asked Tyler to come on a podcast with me, and he agreed to it. This was 7 years ago. So finally I'm back, willing, ready, and able. And it just clicked. Hey, I just saw Tyler's little Hunter Renfro avatar on Twitter, and I think I invited him to do a podcast with me. Get into our DMs, and the last message was from 7 years ago. Hey, I'm getting ready to start getting it going. So I'm pleased to have Raiderdamus here with me. And go ahead and introduce yourself to my viewer, and let's go.
Well, hello, viewer. I am Raiderdamus, the Great and Powerful. I have an article every Friday on Raiderramble.com where I basically roast, do the Comedy Central roast of whoever the Raiders are playing that week, and basically talk crap until they whine and cry in submission. And I give a score prediction every week, and that's sort of my gimmick, is that I can tell the future, and I speak to the great beyond, and he tells me what is going to happen in the Raider game that week. So it's a lot of fun. I've been doing it for probably 12 years now. And I do vaguely remember that DM you sent me 7 years ago, asking me to be on the podcast. And I'm really glad I can finally be here. We did meet on Silver and Black Pride. That was a lifetime ago. But I am on the Raiderramble.com now, and you can catch my work every Friday during the season in Raiderdamus' Saturday Foretelling. Used to be the Friday Foretelling. We run it on Saturdays now. So read and laugh and enjoy.
Yeah, and he was right often, and also missed often, because the great beyond likes to mess with his head. So, it's picking games is kind of difficult stuff, but we'll get into that a little bit more today. We're gonna ask Raiderdamus to forecast some games. So yesterday was the first Sunday, week 1. We did have a Thursday game that was the Kansas City Chiefs sadly being upset at home by the Detroit Lions and my boy Jared Goff, hashtag Nevada boys. And saw Kadarius Toney have an historically bad night. Sky Moore didn't live up to the steam he got all summer. And guess what? Jahmyr Gibbs is super explosive, and Jared Goff is a good game manager. So that was a nice watch. Yesterday, you had the Steelers getting absolutely blown out by the 49ers, who, judging by week 1, look like the best team in the history of the NFL. What kind of things stood out to you yesterday, Tyler?
I thought the Steelers would do an awful lot better than they did. I thought they looked really, really strong during the preseason, and I thought that would carry over into the regular season. Not so much. No, the Niners came into Pittsburgh and laid the smackdown. That was pretty impressive. I really did enjoy watching the Lions take care of the Chiefs, because any day the Chiefs lose is a good day for America, in my view, and a good day for me personally, because I hate them with the burning passion of 1,000 fiery suns. So anytime they lose, it's a really nice experience for me. I enjoyed watching the Chargers choke at the end to the Dolphins.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. The Packers took care of business against the Bears like they normally do. The Bears fans really hyped up their team an awful lot. And as usual, the Bears failed to deliver because they're the Bears. Same goes for the Giants. The Giants have gone to the playoffs a few times recently. And the Cowboys came in and absolutely dismantled them. The Cowboys honestly look like the best team in football. They look a little better than the Niners to me. And if I had to do a power ranking of the NFL teams right now, the Cowboys would be number one. And so
Interesting.
that's a lot of the things that stood out to me. The one thing that also stood out to me was the Bengals absolutely taking a crap in the middle of the field against the Browns and just looking like they don't even belong in the NFL. I was surprised by that. I thought the Bengals would have a better showing, and I think they'll probably have a better showing this week than they did against the Browns. I'm not sure if the Browns are good or if it was just the monsoon that they played in that kept the Bengals a little bit grounded, and the Browns were more able to handle a game like that. I'm really not sure. We'll see in the weeks to come, but I was really surprised by how awful the Bengals looked.
Yeah, I mean, you get into the preseason, you have, say, a list of teams where you ask people what team could go undefeated this season, and I'm pretty sure somebody would have picked the Bengals, somebody would have picked the Chiefs, somebody would have picked, the Giants, somebody would have picked the Steelers. And I don't mean their fans, because their fans obviously would say that and they're biased, but there were some surprising results. Tampa Bay somehow pulled out a victory. I don't think anybody thought that they were going to win that game. The Falcons didn't really do a whole lot, but still managed to beat Carolina. Like some real big surprises. Cincinnati was a big one. I think Cleveland is good. I think they have a good defense, and they just need Deshaun Watson to just do enough and let Chubb go to work and all of that. And I think they should be okay. That's going to be a tough division, because as bad as Pittsburgh looked yesterday, and even with losing Deontay Johnson, I don't think they were as bad as that. I don't think the Bengals are as bad as that. It's week one. Things happen like that all the time. I remember a year, probably 10 years ago or so, 10, 15-ish, the Denver Broncos were coming off. They were at the height of their powers, and I entered a survivor pool, and I looked at the first week's schedule, and they were playing I want to say the Jets, who were at the time just completely atrocious. And so I was like, safe money, boom, Broncos over the Jets, and the Jets upset them in week one. Denver went on to, make the playoffs and be good, and might have even won the Super Bowl that year. But it's week one. Things like that happen, especially when you have a lot of the injuries that we'll get into in a little bit. So you think that the Cowboys looked stronger than the Niners. In what aspect? Is it their running back room, their wide receiver room? Is it the defense and what they did to the Giants? Like what's the basis of that?
Well, I want to address all the upsets first. Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even if you are facing a better team, if you go in there and play physical and punch them in the face like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did in Minnesota, you can win the game. Any team has a puncher's chance, and any team that is overblown has a chance to lose if they don't take care of business. Now, as far as the Cowboys go, I am very happy for them that Ezekiel Elliott is no longer in town. I think he was holding the team back. Now that they've handed the reins over to Tony Pollard, I think they're going to be much more effective on offense. I think their defensive line is a bunch of absolute monsters. I remember when the Giants won 2 Super Bowls, their defensive line were absolutely dominant. And that's more or less what I saw from the Cowboys last night. The Giants had no hope of stopping them, no hope of defending Daniel Jones, none whatsoever. And I think that's going to be a theme for a lot of the Cowboys' opponents this year. I think the only team that might have a chance against them is the Eagles, who looked okay against the Patriots yesterday, not world beaters or anything. But I think in a head-to-head matchup against the Cowboys, they're probably the only team that might be favored against the Cowboys with how good the Cowboys looked in every phase of the game last night.
Yeah, that is going to be a tough division too, because I don't think the Giants are as bad as they played yesterday. Washington looks like they are actually going to be kind of competent. I hate Ron Rivera, even though he's from Cal. I hate him as a head coach, and I don't think that Bieniemy did much to separate himself. It didn't look like a Chiefs run offense. They were, running the ball into the back of the offensive line quite a bit. There wasn't a whole lot of dynamism beyond Jahan Dotson, and, Terry McLaurin looked okay. But that NFC East is pretty damn good. Most people are higher on the AFC than on the NFC, and I think there's a lot there's more competition in the NFC, and there's a lot of teams that are a lot better than than people think that they are in the NFC.
Well, in the NFC, you have three good teams. You have the Niners, the Eagles, and the Cowboys. The NFC South is a disaster. The NFC North, besides the Lions, who are, I think, actually good, is not very good either. So you have three teams in the NFC you can count on to make the playoffs. In the AFC, there's probably 8, 9 teams that you could conceivably say are playoff contenders and might even go to the Super Bowl. There's a lot, and if we consider an injury that happened tonight, maybe one less. So we'll see about that. But I think the NFC is more top heavy as far as like the best teams in the NFC are way better than the best teams in the AFC, but
Right.
the AFC has a lot more depth to consider.
Yeah, I think Green Bay is a lot better than people want to say. They have a pretty good defense, and I think Jordan Love is going to be okay. I was really skeptical going into that game with his wide receiver core missing the deep threat in Christian Watson and everything, but he seemed to put everything together. Aaron Jones is an absolute beast, and he was super fun to watch yesterday. But I think they're going to be definitely battling it out with the Lions in that division. The Bears are pretty awful. Aside from the talent that it looks like Roshan Johnson is going to have as kind of he's big enough to be a 3-down running back. He has the receiving ability, as you could see from the targets that he accrued yesterday. I think he's going to be better than Khalil Herbert. Deontay Foreman is a good running back, but he's not really going to be the guy that you look to. And Justin Fields, he was, I want to say, 34th in DVOA last year as far as quarterbacks. He's a fantasy guy. He's not really a real life guy. So he's got to lead this team, and I don't think that they're going to do much. I thought that their defensive backs were going to come out and kind of shut down the Packers. They made a couple of offseason moves to bring free agent linebackers in who didn't really do a whole lot, and they were. I thought that they would improve more. They didn't look like they improved at all. The Bears looked really bad.
Yeah, the Bears defense was an absolute train wreck yesterday, as they were many times last year. They made some good draft picks on defense in the last couple of years, but I think they're a few drafts away. And it may be that Justin Fields is not the guy in Chicago. He was certainly the guy at Ohio State. I was pretty high on him coming out of the draft.
Yeah.
But he may not be a good fit for the Bears. I mean, the Bears' best quarterback ever is Jay Cutler. In their entire history, they do not know how to develop or treat a quarterback or let one loose. It may be that they have a really high draft pick after their trade with the Carolina Panthers last year, and they may take Drake May or Caleb Williams. I would not be shocked if they did, and I think that'd be a good move for them. I just don't think Justin Fields is a good fit in Chicago at all. I think he'd be a much better fit somewhere else.
I think Drake May is probably they're going to want a pocket guy. They don't necessarily need the new breed of quarterback. Although, if you can't get Caleb Williams, Shedeur Sanders is pretty much putting himself out there and making a name for himself as a candidate. Bo Nix is another guy. They don't have to draft a first. They don't have to use a pick on a quarterback in the first round. They could let Bo Nix come to them later on in the draft. There's going to be a lot of options. There's a lot of quarterbacks in next year's draft. It's pretty deep. It's deep all the way around at every position, but
I'm a big Ducks fan myself, so I've been watching Bo Nix. Well, his first game at Auburn was against the Ducks, so I've been watching him, I suppose, since he was right out of high school. So, so I know what he can do. And at Oregon, he has cleaned up a lot of the sort of mistake-prone ways that made him a liability at Auburn, and he's a much more mature guy now. So I think a well-run organization that needs somebody to not screw up is going to want Bo Nix.
All right, so there have been a ton of injuries over the last couple weeks. Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis is dealing with something, and he's on the PUP list. He may or may not have an actual injury, and he's just being screwed with, or that ankle problem that he has is lingering, and he doesn't want to, put himself out there when he's not making as much money as he wants. Whatever the story is, he's on the PUP list. Deontay Johnson went down with a pretty bad looking hamstring injury yesterday. Aaron Rodgers going out with what looked to be a torn Achilles. They said that it wasn't bad, but he's still going to get an MRI tomorrow. J.K. Dobbins, what a terrible story. That guy has spent the last 3 years trying to fight back, and he finally gets out there, and first game, there goes his Achilles again. Um, sad on that front. Um, what are some of the injuries that you were looking at that you think are going to affect the
Oh,
races?
jeez. The Dobbins injury is huge. I mean, tearing his knee up like that again. The Ravens didn't have a massive running game anyway, even with Lamar Jackson. I mean, Justice Hill is good, but I mean, how much can you rely on him? He hasn't really carried the rock that much before. I mean, he was pretty good at, I believe, Oklahoma State, if I recall correctly. And so maybe he turns out to be really good, and they'll be fine. And who knows? But the Ravens have like 6 or 7 just massive injuries on the team that are going to hold them back.
Yeah,
The Aaron Rodgers injury I actually saw coming. I looked at this game and I was like, yeah, Rodgers is going to be out there for about 5 plays before somebody lands on him, and he's going to just his ass is going to be grass.
yeah,
And I was right. I mean, he was like 87 years old, and they have him going out there for the Jets. And people were hyping up the Jets, forgetting that they are in fact the Jets, and nothing good will ever happen to the Jets because God hates them. And I wasn't shocked at all that Aaron Rodgers got hurt. And they did X-rays on him and they're negative, so nothing is broken. But if something is torn, I would not be surprised if his career was over. I mean, the
yeah,
same thing more or less happened to Dan Marino.
yeah. I was fairly optimistic for Rodgers. I thought that he was going to be in a pretty good situation with a high-powered offense, or the potential for a high-powered offense. I like Robert Saleh as a coach, and I had high hopes for him. Yeah, so that was kind of heartbreaking for me to see, just because I like the guy so much. All right, so let's get really into this one. 7 times the Denver Broncos have come calling, and 7 times the Las Vegas Raiders have said, "Get the fuck out of my yard." 0-7 are the Broncos against the Las Vegas iteration of the Raiders, and Russell Wilson can't seem to find his winning ways. Divine Diablo was an absolute menace and looked fantastic. Nate Hobbs is definitely an all-pro slot cornerback. Max Crosby is a total beast. That defense held Denver to 16 points. We went into Denver and shut the door. Let's go Raiders. What were your impressions of the game?
Absolutely. Well, I will tell you this. I was at the draft in Nashville in 2019 when Josh Jacobs was drafted. I was there. I was there for his press conference. I don't believe he was at the draft, but I was at the press conferences for several players there. I believe Josh was home that day and didn't come to the draft for some reason. But I saw him get drafted, and I was very excited to see it. And I was less excited for the other players that the Raiders drafted that night, for Farrell and Abram.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were superfluous and unnecessary. But Josh Jacobs, I was just happy that the Raiders got him and not the Eagles, because the Eagles were a team that a lot of people mocked to get Josh Jacobs, but they decided to take Andre Dillard instead. And so I was pretty happy about that. And I have never in my entire life seen Josh Jacobs lose to the Denver Broncos, which makes me very happy.
Yeah.
The Raiders went in and they didn't beat the Broncos' ass like I was hoping they would. They played a disciplined game. They played a game where they didn't make a lot of mistakes except for penalties, didn't commit turnovers. It is amazing what happens when a quarterback in Josh McDaniel's system knows how to use the system, knows what the system is, and knows how to execute the system. It was night and day from what Derek Carr did in Josh McDaniel's system to what Jarrett Stidham did in Josh McDaniel's system last year. You saw a quarterback who knew what he was doing. Derek Carr was out there with his hair on fire doing whatever Derek Carr does. Now, good
Right.
for him for winning with the Saints yesterday, but if Derek Carr had played that game yesterday for the Raiders, we would have lost by 10 points. So I was really happy with not only the Raiders' execution on offense, I was happy with their tackling. I thought it was really good. I was happy with the fact that the Raiders, who in previous years probably would have given up at halftime or forgot to play football in the second half like they did so many times last year, Cardinals, I was happy that they didn't just give up and lose heart, that they stayed in the game and they played 60 minutes. And for the first time in a long time, they ran out the clock with 5 minutes left and didn't give the ball back to the other team with a chance to win the game. I thought that was really important. Last year or 2 years ago, the Raiders would have gone 3 and out and kicked the ball back to the Broncos with 4:10 left on the clock. the Broncos would have gone down, kicked a field goal, and won. But that's not what happened yesterday. The Raiders had their head on their shoulders, and they held on for the win, and that's what really encouraged me. I'm not sure how many games the Raiders are going to win this year because, honestly, the roster isn't that great or that talented, but they're competent. And if they're competent against a team with a defense the caliber of the Broncos, which is probably a top 7, top 8 unit in the league, they're going to be competent against a lot of teams.
Now, while the Raiders are 1-0 and sitting pretty atop the AFC West at the moment, I do think that they and the Broncos are going to be battling out the 3rd and 4th spots in that division. Obviously, the Chargers and the Chiefs are a step ahead of both of those teams, but it's just so nice to watch them go in and smack the Broncos around. I got the feeling that the defense played better than I expected them to, and the offense was essentially, it was a picture-perfect Josh McDaniels offense. They weren't doing anything dynamic. Jimmy looked okay when he was trying to improvise a little bit. He had that one pass that was, I want to say, to Adams, where he kind of had to scramble to his right and dump a pass off. Patrick Surtain kind of shut Davante Adams down a little bit. Jacoby Myers stepped up, and he was the possession guy that we knew that he could be coming in. And they completely shuttled Hunter Renfrow out of the program, which was disappointing and a surprise to me, because I think if you give that guy the opportunity to make himself open, I think he can do that. But that's more of an improvisational thing rather than Josh McDaniels' strict, this is the play, this is what everybody needs to do. I think Renfrow works on a different level, and it'll be nice to see him go somewhere else and ply his trade there and show everybody what he can do, because he's a good wide receiver. He just didn't get much of a chance in Josh McDaniels' system, but it was a beautiful win. It's always nice to beat the Broncos.
I think yesterday's game showed that the most important free agency signing that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler have had so far is Jacoby Myers, because teams are going to focus on Davante Adams all game long. And if someone else can step up, then they're not going to be able to do that as easily. And I think Jacoby Myers showed that he was well deserving of being a number 1 receiver in New England. And as a number 2 receiver in Las Vegas, he's absolutely going to thrive. And I know he's in the concussion protocol right now, so I hope he's going to be good to go pretty soon, because the Raiders absolutely need him. Because if teams are going to focus on Davante Adams, and if Jimmy G is going to forget his tight ends exist, then we're going to need somebody else to step up as a number 2 wide receiver.
Right, and we let Mac Hollins go after his. I'm kidding. The whole
Mac
that
Hollins
Mac
is a
Hollins,
good Raider. I will not accept any slander on Mac Hollins.
I'm not slandering him. He had a career year for us. Like he was our number 2 wide receiver last year. That was, and it was Mac Hollins, and he's a great dude and fun to watch. It was fantastic, and we let him go. So now there's a hole in my heart, but he's not the guy that you want to rely on. That's all I'm saying.
He went Jacoby to Myers and put on 80 pounds of muscle. He looks like the Hulk now.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so let's get into some of the situations that we're looking at for next week. I know it's a little bit early. It's still 5:50 to go in the 4th quarter in New York, as actually Zach Wilson and the Jets are on the 9-yard line trying to tie this game, and Zach Wilson and he's tackled at the 2. They're knocking on the door. Let's get a Breece Hall touchdown right now, even though he's on my bench and would be the difference in this game, even with Diggs having the game he has. Okay, anyway, it's still Monday night. The games aren't over for the week, but let's get into some of the games next week. Judging based on what we saw yesterday, we have some pretty big division games. Cleveland and Pittsburgh. What does the great Beyond tell Raiderdamus about that one?
That the Cleveland is going to come back to earth, and the Steelers are going to be more like what they showed in the preseason than what they showed against the Niners. I think the Steelers win by 4.
Steelers by 4. All right, same division. We got Baltimore and Cincinnati. Based on what happened yesterday, what are we looking at?
Again, I think the teams trade wins and losses from last week. I think the Bengals come back out with their hair on fire, and I think the Ravens are just too beat up to compete, and I think the Bengals win by, I'll go with 6.
Okay. And Garrett Wilson just made a pretty incredible catch. And the Jets are about to tie the game with 5 minutes left. One hand, he reaches up, knocks the ball over to him, taps it back to himself, and catches it as he's falling down. That's crazy. That's a highlight reel catch for sure. Everybody's going to want to see that. All right. A barn burner. Houston hosting the Indianapolis Colts and their new phenom, Anthony Richardson.
Ugh. Does somebody have to win this game, or can we just not pretend it didn't happen?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a division matchup.
I really liked what I saw yesterday out of the Houston defense. I thought they were pretty good. But I think Richardson will be good to go for the Colts this week.
Yeah.
And I think they win by 3 points over Houston.
Indy over Houston. Okay. And San Francisco, fresh off kicking the shit out of Pittsburgh, they're going down to LA and playing the Rams in another divisional rivalry game. The Rams surprisingly holding Seattle under the water like they were trying to drown their stepchild. What do you see in that game?
The Rams looked amazing against Seattle, and they're going to look much less amazing against the Niners. I think the Niners won by 14.
Yeah. Maybe Stafford goes out.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard over time is the Niners defense isn't just good, and they don't just beat you. They beat you to a pulp. And somebody said yesterday that they are one of the top 2 teams, if not the top team, but people who go on the injury list the week after playing them, nobody puts more people out than the 49ers do. They're just violent.
I remember the 70s Raiders used to do that too. They would beat the crap out of people, and nobody would play it the next week. It's like when Nolan Ryan would pitch, everyone would suddenly get really, really sick.
Yeah. If Sean McVay's smart, he'll go ahead and sit Matt Stafford. New Orleans and Carolina at Carolina.
Didn't they just play Carolina?
No.
Oh no,
Carolina
the Falcons played Carolina.
Atlanta.
My bad. Okay, yeah, I got the Saints in that one. I think Derek Carr is not going to be phased by the Carolina defense. All those NFC South teams are the same person to me. So, but yeah, I think Derek Carr wins this game by 6.
I put that one out there because I wanted to hear you say nice things about Derek Carr. All right.
Well, Derek Carr is a great quarterback. He's just not good as a Raider.
I mean,
I saw him play at Fresno State. He was fine.
Yeah, and he was great in 2016, and he was great in 2022, and yeah, I think New Orleans is going to have a pretty big year, especially given that they're going to go 6-0 in the division. So, all right, now let's get into the nitty gritty. We got the Chiefs visiting Jacksonville.
Oh, I want Jacksonville to win this game so badly. You know what? They will. Jacksonville by 1, 21-20.
The great beyond has spoken through Raiderdamus.
Yeah, screw the Chiefs. I'm not going to predict them to win anything.
I don't know what the Chiefs can do to stop Travis Etienne. I don't know what they can do to stop Trevor Lawrence. And their offense looked pretty sketchy on Thursday. So yeah, I would take Jacksonville in that game, especially if lines come out and Kansas City is favored in that game. I'm putting my money on Jacksonville.
Oh yeah, hammer the spread if Jacksonville is the underdog in that game.
Absolutely, especially as home dogs. Okay, Denver hosting the Potatoes of Washington.
Yeah, Washington barely squeaked by the Cardinals, which I think most junior high teams in this country could do. So I'm going to go with Denver by 4.
Denver at home. Okay. The Chargers on the road in Nashville going against that rush defense in Tennessee.
Well, since the Chargers don't run the ball, that's not going to matter. The Titans are a bunch of frauds, and I don't, and frankly, so are the Chargers, but I trust them a little bit more than I trust the Titans. So I think the Chargers win by 7.
Austin Eckler is hurt. There's a possibility that we'll find out tomorrow if he's going to be out for the game. And there's a fight. There you go. Oh, people are getting thrown down. I'm going to have to go watch this replay. All right. Next one is the big one for us. and it's these Buffalo Bills that are on my TV right now, and they're playing host to the Vegas Raiders.
Uh,
Now,
I
keep in mind, this is a Buffalo team that has now put up 13 total points in almost 4 full quarters against the Jets.
Yeah, the Bills might not be as good as everyone thinks. I'm also pretty sure the Raiders aren't as good as everyone thinks. I am going to reserve
Low
judgment on
bar.
this game because I do have an article coming out about a score prediction later on in the week.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm not going
No,
to make an official score prediction now. What I will say is I think it'll be a good game to watch.
yeah,
We're
don't
all Raider
reveal
fans.
anything. Don't reveal
No,
anything.
but a competent Raider team against the Bills has a puncher's chance.
Yeah. And, if you want to know what the Great Beyond has to say about that game, make sure that you go to, is it Raiders Wire, you said?
It's
Raider
RaiderRamble.com.
Ramble. Go to Raider Ramble and read Raiderdamus's column. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the Raiders are going to upset the Bills in that game. They're just not showing me anything this week. The Bills aren't showing me anything. The Raiders showed me yesterday that they can control the game flow, and do just enough to win. So if they can keep that as a formula, I think they're going to upset some people. There might be a time where they go into Kansas City and just get absolutely like shit canned, get boat raced. But I don't think that's going to happen next week against the Bills. All right. Now, at the end of my podcast, what I like to do is a power rankings, and I let the guests pick what topic that they want to do, and you picked the best concerts that you have ever attended. And when you threw this list out there, it was right in my wheelhouse. I've seen a couple of the bands that you mentioned, and I'll get into it with you. But we'll go down from 5 to 1, and the best concerts that you ever saw. Give me, I'll give you the band, and then you give me where you saw them and what made the show great. All right. So
All
number
right.
5, you had Tool.
Yeah, I saw Tool last January at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. I had to get on a plane to go see them, which made it pretty special because it was really, really expensive to go to this show.
Yeah.
I was able to get pretty reasonable tickets, so the tickets, which are usually, well, the tickets are the reason I've only seen Tool once. I'll say that
Right.
they're usually on the pricey side, sort of like going to see
100,
the Rolling
150
Stones or something
bucks,
like that.
depending.
Yeah, and that that's about what I paid, but I've seen them for way more than that.
Sure.
But Tool's my favorite band in the world. I wish I
Absolutely.
could have seen them back on the Lateralis tour because I think Lateralis is the best album ever made by anybody. And but this was really cool. This was on the Fear Inoculum tour, and the light show, just the lasers and the sound atmosphere, and just the crowd getting really, really into it. It was almost a spiritual experience to see them, and so
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed it. It was fantastic.
So Tool is definitely one of my favorite bands of all time. Tool is definitely my older son's favorite band of all time. My younger son wants to go see them with us. He loves them too. So it's a family kind of thing. And a couple years ago, my older son and I went and saw them in Sacramento. And I literally cried tears, cognizant of the fact that I was sitting there and seeing Tool live. I've never had an emotional response like that to any band ever. And I was totally sober. I hadn't been drinking. I wasn't on DMT. I hadn't eaten any mushrooms. I hadn't done any of the typical Tool fan things. And like I had tears coming down my face because I was so happy that I was finally like getting to see them. And I love Tool a lot. They're pretty incredible. One of my favorite things to do is to find the people online who do like the first listen and listen to Tool songs. There's one guy that's on YouTube, and he's like a composer, and his background is all in soundtrack and classical music composition. And he started watching Tool videos, knowing nothing about the band, and the musical arrangements that he's watching, he's sitting there going, "This is legit. These guys are good. Every single one of them is the top of their class at whatever instrument that they're playing." Maynard might vocally be the best player of vocal cords that is out there right now. Danny Carey is highly regarded as the best drummer on the planet.
The
Justin
bass
is one
player,
of the
Justin.
Justin's one of the best bass players. Adam is one of the best guitar players that there is. On top of that, the songs that they write are absolutely fantastic. And if you haven't seen Tool, do whatever you can to go and see them the next time they're around. A lot of people didn't like Fear Inoculum. I thought it was a really, really great record. I listened to it all the time. But I listen to all of them all the time. Okay. Number 4. Another top 5 band for me, Slayer. When did you see him? What was the show?
I saw him about 3 years ago on their farewell tour. I saw him at the Kettle House Amphitheater in Missoula, Montana, which is pretty close to where I live currently. And the amphitheater is in the middle of a forest surrounded by mountains. So you look around and there's the Rocky Mountains are all around you and you're in the middle of a bunch of trees. So
Wow.
you don't get much more picturesque than this. I mean, it's pretty similar to Red Rock, so just smaller.
That's what I was thinking that.
Yeah, and on this tour, they Behemoth opened, followed by Lamb of God. And I've seen Lamb of God probably 6 times, but I'd never seen Behemoth before. So it was really, really neat. The only problem I had was that Behemoth played during the day. And if you go to see Behemoth, you want them to be in the dark. You want to see them at night or inside a building. Seeing them play with the sun shining on them seemed almost sacrilegious, considering the content of their music. But they were really, really good. And Slayer, I knew that this was the last time I was ever going to get a chance to see them. And I didn't want to miss it. I had a chance to go see Motorhead before Lemmy died, and I passed it up because I thought, oh, they come here every year, I'll get to see him again. And Lemmy died like a couple weeks later, so I was like, I am not letting that happen to me again. So I had to go see them, and they put on an absolutely amazing show. And they ended with Rain and Blood, and I got to leave to the echoes of the guitar in the air, and it was just there's nothing like Slayer. I mean,
Yeah.
They've been around for 40 years or something, and no one eclipsed them as far as pure aggression and energy in their music. I mean, they had it in '83 with the Show No Mercy album, and they still had it on their last day. And you got to give props to somebody like that. Yeah, you just have to give it up for somebody with that kind of longevity who never, ever gave a fuck and never, ever were lesser than they were on day one.
Yeah, and no self-respecting Raiders fan cannot like Slayer.
So many Raiders jerseys in the audience, and the biggest pit, the biggest circle mosh pit I've ever seen in my life, which was great.
Yeah, and Kerry King is one of the biggest Raiders fans of all time. I want to say it was 2001. They played a show in Little Rock, Arkansas, where I was going to college, and they were on tour with Pantera, and I want to say Death Angel and Static X. And Pantera was the headliner, but Slayer was the opening band. It went Static X and then Death Angel and then Slayer, and that was another one that just it completely kicked our asses. It was a 70-mile drive home, and the drive home hurt. I love Slayer very, very much. Okay, number 3, Mastodon.
All right, I've seen Mastodon twice. Once was at the same place I saw Slayer, and they opened for Primus, which was an awesome show. But the one I'm thinking of was at a place also in Missoula called the Wilma Theater, which is a really, really tall building. And my seats to see Mastodon, who were amazing musically. I mean, if you want to talk about people being on the top of their game from a musicianship standpoint, Mastodon is pretty high up there. So they were absolutely fantastic. But this one stands out to me for one reason. It's that my seats were on the 3rd floor up a set of spiral staircases. And so it was really, really hard to get to where I was sitting. Now, when I was a teenager in the DARE program at school, I was told, "Oh, you're going to get offered drugs a lot when you're growing up," and that never happened to me ever once in my entire life, except for this Mastodon concert. A man came up to me with the largest doobie joint I have ever seen in my entire life. It was probably this big if it was an inch, and he said, "Hey, man, would you like to smoke this with me?" And I looked around because I was not against sharing this doobie with my man on principle. But I looked around at where I was, and I realized that if I took a hit of this, I was not getting back down. There was no way I was going to get back down to where I came from if I enjoyed this with him. So I had to politely decline and enjoy the show very sober. which was a little
Right.
bit of a downer. But Mastodon was so good that it didn't really matter.
Okay. That's you obviously didn't have season tickets in Oakland at the same place I did, because I was at the very last row at the very top of the stadium, and I I was offered fairly regularly. Um, I was always driving, so I never partook, but not then anyway. Let's see, Mastodon. I have never seen Mastodon. However, Brent Hines of Mastodon had a side project with Danny Carey and I want to say Justin Chancellor from Tool, and it's called Legend of the Seagullmen, and they sing basically metal sea shanties. Look them up on Spotify, Legend of the Seagullmen. My son had a connection. We got into a bar for the CD release party, so I technically have seen a member of Mastodon live. I just haven't seen the band itself live there, but I like them. All right, number 2, Slipknot.
Slipknot is just about as good as it gets as far as live music. The sound is on point. The light show is on point. But this band's energy is higher than any band I've ever seen. And they do the thing that Motley Crue used to do, where they strap the drummer into his drum set on a big racing car seat, and they turn the drum set upside down and spin it around like Tommy Lee used to do back in the 80s. And it's super impressive. And they have a couple of guys in the band, the founder Clown being one of them, whose job it is to take a baseball bat and hit a bunch of kegs. And that's basically all they do. And these kegs are on like hydraulic scissor lifts that go about 20 feet in the air. So he's just up there, just near the roof, basically taking his baseball bat and hitting the keg as hard as he can to make sounds. And It's just like, how can you be more creative in heavy metal than to have this kind of percussion? It's not like two drummers like some bands have. It's you have like 3 or 4 of them, and they're hitting things that aren't typically used in production in percussion sense. And it's just it was mind blowing, frankly, as a live experience.
Nice. Not a huge Slipknot fan, but I really dig Mate Feed Kill Repeat. I think that's one of the most incredible albums any band has ever put together. It's super hard to find. I had it like back in literally the Napster days, but it's basically a bunch of metal heads who are music students and very good at their craft, totally into jazz, and they made a jazz metal fusion, and that's what Slipknot's first iteration was. And the Mate Feed Kill Repeat record is absolutely mind-blowing. It is so good, and it's just jazz sprinkled in with super fast riffing and screaming, and it's just like it's a mind melter, but it's super good.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to see them on the Volume 3 Subliminal Verses tour, and Volume 3 I think is their best album. That's where their sound like matured, and they turned into the Slipknot that got really super popular. And there's a reason for that. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, they're good. All right, and your number 1, and this there are a lot of people out there who will tell you, if you only ever see one band live in your life, make sure it's this show, Gwar.
Well, if there's one band you want to see in your life, well, if there's one show you want to see in your life, it's Prince opening for Kiss. But if you want to see a heavy metal show, you go see Gwar. Now, the first time I ever saw Gwar, I was not super familiar with them. I went to see the show because they were the favorite band of Beavis and Butthead. And when I think good musical taste, I think Beavis and Butthead, obviously. So I went to the show at the Roseland Theater in Portland, where I saw, probably a couple dozen shows, if not 3 dozen, back in the day when I lived close to Portland. When I went there and I stood in the audience up close, right next to the bass speaker, as I was usually accustomed to doing, and I looked around and everybody in the crowd was wearing a white t-shirt. And having been to my fair share of metal concerts before this, I was like, why is everybody wearing a white shirt? Usually people wear black concert tees or whatever, and they don't wear white. What is going on? And at the end of the show, everybody was wearing a purple t-shirt. And the reason for this is that if you don't know about Gwar, they like to spray things at the audience. And they like to bring out giant cannons and fire blood and alien sperm at the audience. and make everybody multicolored by the end of it. I mean, it's like it's theater blood and theater goo. It's not real anything. But at the end of it, you are messed up. You look like you've been in a car crash. And I went home from that show, and my wife at the time said, "Oh God, what happened to you?" Because I looked like I'd been in a wreck, and I was like, "Oh no, I just went to see Guar. They shot stuff. They sprayed the audience with liquid." She's like, "Oh, I'm glad you're okay." And so, but I've seen Guar 4 times now. The first time I saw them, that same show, I was at the front up against the barricade. That was a very bad idea. Not because Kingdom of Sorrow opened for them, and they were a side project of Jamie Joster from Hatebreed, so they're very, very heavy. And somebody way in the back decided to crowd surf foot first. And so I got a sneaker right to the side of my head.
Yeah.
Right before he went over the barricade, and security grabbed him and threw him back. And so when Kingdom of Sorrow went off of the stage and Guar was getting ready to come up, Guar likes to put down a backdrop and display a countdown to when they're going to come on stage before they do so. And so 10 minutes, 9 minutes, the crowd started to get really, really rowdy at that point, and they started to press me up against the barricade from the back. It's just a wall of humanity crushing me. And I realized after a few minutes of attempting to endure this that I had two choices. I was going to die of suffocation, or I was going to die of being trampled. Those were my options. So I looked at one of the security guards and I said, "I need to get out now." And so they were nice enough to push the crowd back and help me out. But yeah, I came very nearly to death on the very first time I saw Guar. Now, the other 3 times I've seen them have been much less interesting than that. But I have gotten sprayed no less by the blood and gore and have the pictures to prove it. And the music was no less amazing because Guar is incredibly technically sound for as goofy ass a band as they are.
Right. Yeah. For those not familiar, Gwar is spelled GWA_R, and they are aliens. They're not even from Earth. They're definitely highly recommended to go a show to go see. Now, here's the question: does the Great Beyond talk to Gwar?
Well, the Great Beyond is not from this Earth, so he often will commune with Guar at their space base in Antarctica. The Guar are not super interested in football. They are from Washington, so they're probably Commanders fans. So the football doesn't really appeal to them anymore.
All right. Well, Tyler, this has been absolutely awesome getting to meet you, having you on the show. Once again, tell everybody where to find your writing and Raiderdamus on Twitter, right?
Yes, at Raiderdamus on Twitter. You can follow me there. And I muse about different things a few times a day, usually during the week. And you can find me on Raiderramble.com. Every Saturday during the season, I'll have Raiderdamus' Saturday for Telling. And I basically roast whoever the Raiders are playing, and I give a score prediction. So hopefully you all find it very enjoyable.
Tyler's a really good writer. Don't listen to him. All right. Everybody else, please like this video, subscribe to it, share it around, and please comment. Not a lot of people getting into the channel yet, but I'm going to keep plugging away, and hopefully we can build something to the point where maybe I can create some merch or something like that. I don't know. Do a Patreon thing, give you a free t-shirt. And 10 seconds left. The Jets are up by 3. The Bills are going down. It's 3rd and 10.
Can I just say that any team that loses to Zach Wilson should be disbanded?
Yeah, that's the most insane part about this whole game is the fact that Rodgers went out right at the beginning and the Jets are about to win. Looks like Tyler Bass is going to try and tie the game. But we're going to say our goodbyes. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Tyler, for being on here. And
thank you.
Join me next time in the Fantasy Burn, everybody.